discovers his beauty. Once, after he had finished his work with the angels, Lucifer came in and sat down on his throne near God, just as he always did. Perhaps he had the singers learning another new song and had been out practicing with them. Anyway, on this particular occasion, he found God the Father and God the Son leaning toward each other and so busy talking about something that they hardly seemed to notice when Lucifer came up. When he sat down, they stopped talking to each other and greeted him pleasantly. Lucifer perhaps thought they were discussing something they planned to do for him to do, and he expected any minute they would get around to telling him about it. But they never did say a word to him about anything special. The more he thought about it, the more curious he became to know what it was that they had as a secret. He kept wondering about it so much that after a while he could hardly think about anything else. Why, he asked himself, now just why did God tell the Son something that he didn't tell me too? Here I sit beside them, and it doesn't seem quite fair for them to keep anything secret from me. If I am important enough for God to put me on one side of his great throne, like the throne of the Son, why doesn't he tell me everything he tells the Son? He became very jealous of the Son. I can imagine he got to feeling so sorry for himself that he decided to go for a walk beside the shining river. I can just see him as he walked along, his head hanging down, thinking unhappy thoughts. Let's suppose he came to a quiet pool and stopped a minute to admire the lovely reflections in the water. After a few minutes, he noticed something special. Why, it was a reflection of himself. How beautiful it was. Now, I'm sure Lucifer had noticed his reflection in the water many times before, but he had never paid any particular attention to it. He had always been too busy thinking up new songs to teach the angels and planning other ways that he and the angels could please God. And besides, everything and everybody in heaven and in all the worlds were so lovely that no one ever thought about making comparisons, whether this one was prettier than the others. They were all satisfied and happy with themselves and with each other. But on this particular day, Lucifer was thinking about himself. So, of course, he noticed himself. We can imagine what he was thinking as he studied that gorgeous reflection in the pool. My, I never realized before how handsome I am. At that, he smiled and stood up a little straighter, and he looked still more handsome. So he turned his head first this way and then that way, and he smoothed his wings a bit and patted his hair into a nice shape. Then he looked yet closer at the image in the pool. Why, I'm more beautiful than any of the other angels, much more beautiful. Isn't it strange I hadn't noticed this before? He was so pleased with himself that he walked on feeling quite happy. He wasn't walking with his head hanging down now. Oh no, he held his head up high and proud. Then, oh dear, he thought, I was at the pool so long I might be late. The Father may have a message for me to tell the angels when I practice the song for the meeting, so I'd better hurry. With that, he probably spread his wings and flew the rest of the way. By now he was feeling so cheerful that it did not bother him much when he went up and sat down in his place by the throne and remembered again about God's secret. When worship time came, the thousands and thousands of angels were in their proper places as usual. Their eyes were fixed on their great leader, watching for the signal to begin the music. He stepped to his place, and at the lift of his hand, the song burst forth in shimmering glory. The trumpets rang out, and the harpers harped. Under the spell of the divine harmony, Lucifer's heart was melted. He was overwhelmed by a flood of affection for God. It filled his heart to overflowing and spread until his entire being thrilled with love. He held up his hand for silence, The angels watched in wonder as Lucifer turned slowly around until he faced the throne. They saw him bow his head as if in prayer. Then his noble head lifted. As the angel throng waited in questioning silence, their beloved Lucifer began to sing. Such singing not even the angels of heaven had heard before. They stood entranced by the magic beauty of that rare voice which God had created, especially for Lucifer, his loveliest angel. God leaned forward on his throne to listen. It was a song of praise and gratitude, and the heart of God rejoiced to hear it. Under the enchanted spell, the angels began to hum softly in rhythm with Lucifer's singing. Finally, they were caught up in the ecstasy of praise and raised their voices in a swelling crescendo that rose like a cloud of incense before the golden throne. And God sang back to them. His voice was as the music of many rivers flowing over them. Then they all sang together, Lucifer, the host of angels, and God singing with them, in a rapture of joy that swelled to the very ends of the heavens. I like to imagine that some of the glorious music spilled over the edges of heaven and drifted down into space where the inhabitants of the worlds could hear. And as they looked up and listened, surely they must have known that it was the hour of worship in heaven. Then they too may have joined their voices in joyous song and grateful prayer. When the heavenly song was done, God stretched out his hands in blessing over the angels bowed before him. In every heart was only peace and joy, even in the heart of Lucifer, the most beautiful angel of them all. Margie let out a long breath. Oh, what a relief. I was afraid for a minute the story was going to have a bad ending. I'm so glad Lucifer changed his mind in time. It would be a shame for him to spoil that beautiful heaven. Aunt Trudy smiled knowingly but sadly as she thought of how Margie would be disappointed as the story continued. When Dick wanted to know what happened next, she said, "Just wait and see. This much I'll say. Lucifer kept on asking questions. In fact, it all boiled down to one question. Why? Why? Why?"